it's been cool to get to know you in our few conversations and like hear a lot about what you're trying to do in the space with this podcast. Now as Zach French, your real name.
That's right, audience. I doxed myself this past
exciting.
week. I am no longer off edge. It was pretty open anyways, but man, I have to say it is liberating. I feel like it's just the consistency and being Zach French across all platforms.
What was the main? I guess so. Initially, were you kind of hoping to go down like an anonymous path, or is it just more of like a screen name that you just took on at one point?
So the original kind of motivation to be off edge was like more like conformist, which is kind of ironic, right? Like because everybody had pseudonyms. And at first, like I wouldn't post pictures of myself or anything like that. And then one day I went on a run with my cousin. He's like, "Sorry, I doxed you." And I posted a picture of us after a run. And then I was like, "Wait, I'm about to have a podcast. I'm gonna record video." So the origin of the name was a blog that I wrote 2 posts for called Hanging Off Edge. And it was around the stock market, and I didn't study finance. I didn't get an MBA. I didn't work at Goldman or like one of the big investment banks, but like I enjoy investing. And so when you're investing, your edge is your advantage, right? And so I was hanging off the edge because I didn't come from those traditional backgrounds. And that's too much of a mouthful, hanging off edge. So I cut it to off edge. And then it just kind of took its life. But like, honestly, like, even though I was known as off edge in Twitter and in Discord, it wasn't like the people that I had really good relationships with, like they knew me as Zach, right? So it was just, eventually I was just like, what's the point? And like a lot of my friends that listen to like every single show, they're like, dude, like you got a great name. Like just go with your name. Like Zach French, man. You don't need to be Zach French / off edge in parentheses or anything.
That's it's a really rich conversation, I think, about an anonymity, like screen names, like pseudonyms, and like just going with your real name, and like how people end up choosing what they choose. And for me, it was kind of like two things for just using kind of like my real name and like kind of just being fully doxxed from the jump. One, I've had Twitter since I think 2010 or something. So like, I just was like, I was just engaging with NFT stuff, and I started realizing no one had their real name, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I kind of I felt like I might have been doing something wrong because, like you said, it was just like the conformity of most things was everyone was using a unique name. But then I quickly realized once I got into the space as a creator, there was a huge benefit to be able to use my real name so that people could look at my work and kind of like see that I didn't just pick up a camera, because I wanted to make money in Web3. So it was a nice layer of credibility. But I certainly understand people who, choose to be anonymous. It sounds exhausting and just filled with anxiety. You would have to like watch your every step. But so yeah, I'm glad you have that. You share the freedom that us doxed folk have.
It is though, like you're pointing to something that is kind of fundamental to the space. And I think some people have the capacity to be multiple people. Mm-hmm. I don't. I'm me. Mm-hmm. Like, in fact, like I've had other people tell me like one of the best things about me is that you're always going to get the same person, right? Like you're not really going to get like Zach one day acting one way. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have mood swings, but like you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Like I come to the workplace and I'm the same person that I am at home, more or less, right? And it's a big difference. But like you look at some of the most famous, completely anonymous individuals, and they have a reason for being anonymous. A lot of them, like 6529 comes to mind, and how 6529 was, as they proclaim on Twitter, successful, and doesn't surprise me, in other fields, in that if there was if they had just come out as that person, then they wanted like the opposite of what you had. They didn't want the credibility and the presupposed opinions about that person, because there would be certain circles who would know who that person is. And they wanted to come in fresh from 0 followers. And I checked yesterday, they have 395,000 followers now.
Wow.
And I'm just like, you get it. But like, that's an edge case, in my opinion, right? Like, I think, a lot of people did what I did, which is like, as a collector, it just seemed like the right thing to do, to be anonymous. There was also like, when I first joined Nifty Gateway, which is where I first started buying NFTs and like learning what Web3 was, like there was like the security issue was already big and prominent. And so it was like, I didn't like link my email to begin with, or like anything, because I was just I didn't want people to know who I was at that point. But now it's kind of like, well, I understand what a cold wallet is, I can transfer stuff over there. And so like, I definitely see like different use cases, but I think, and also, I mean, remember the big movement towards like, I'm only buying projects with doxed founders and all that. So like, there is that level of like, me and Jameson talked about reputational risk. When he was on the show, that we were talking about, that's like, hey, if I know who you are, then you are less likely to rug me. Right. Or even a slow rug, right? Like, because, I know that you have a photography production studio in Arizona. Right. Like, yeah. And like, it's interesting. I mean, I get both sides of it. And I think I kind of think of it as like existing on a spectrum, right? The same way that I think about like IP rights, whether to go like retain those rights, license those rights, or go full CC0, right? I don't think any of them are a catch-all, but I do love that the space encourages people to do it for the right reasons sometimes, right? Like, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's part of like, I think for a lot of people, the space, it was kind of this chance to I guess reinvent yourself, or like you could kind of, you could come into it in whatever way you wanted to. And I think even now, like you said, there's so many different components to it, and a lot of them are on a spectrum that you can really, it's kind of empowering. You can be who you want to be, and if your ambitions are in the right place, you can find an audience, right? You can find people who respect what your goal is. So this is a great example would be the artist we follow, Pac. I mean, to say that Pac is polarizing is probably an understatement for a lot of people. And a lot of people, think of the fact that he is anonymous, that there's, the sole purpose is to do slow rugs and just to be a jerk and just like take people's money. But I mean, as we can see, is like a lot of people kind of can understand what the greater vision is there, and still we're still here for it, and like there's no ill will, and it's just for me it's exciting still, like but at the same time I know people who, I think it's a lot of it was just managing your expectations, and like I don't know, having a better awareness of what the space is. And again, I guess that's maybe a critique of the overall space, because there's a lot going on and it's hard to like understand just how complex and like how many different things there are. And it really requires you to like have some due diligence on like almost every single move you make in the space. And that's just like such a barrier to entry for a lot of people. And it's like some people I'm like afraid to recommend getting in the space because I'm like, ooh, like they might totally, give up their seed phrase in the first week, or like you just have
Yeah.
to. It can be tricky.
There's a level of autonomy that not everybody should be blessed with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I walk that line sometimes.
Me too. Me too. And then there's the other side, which is like everybody needs to get scammed for like a rite of passage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
just hope you don't lose everything. Also, with Pack, it's like if you knew who they were and they were making hundreds of millions of dollars, like, would they be able to create as much, or would they have to focus even more on public perception? And I mean, just think about like the people that are in the limelight that make that kind of money as creators. I mean, they're celebrities. They're followed everywhere. They're filmed everywhere. But if you don't know who it is, right? What can you really do? Troll them on Twitter and Discord, right?
Right.
And I think Pack has already shown that they will disappear for a while if they need to. For better or for worse. I mean, people have short memories. That's always been kind of my idea of like the strategy here. And, eventually people start to slow down. I think there's been some of his larger collectors that have changed their perception lately very publicly. But, to me, and like, not to like drill too down in like Pack, but like the ethos is still there. That hasn't changed. I think that, the controversy like really drums up, like forces you to confirm your convictions, if anything.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. That's what happened with the brief bear market that we went through in like April, May of last year. It was like, that's when Pack launched the fungible, and everything was completely dominated. I mean, I remember my portfolio was probably down 80-90%. It was a sad. It was like I only put in what I said I was willing to lose, but like I was still up at night. Like, what was I doing? But then that collection and that release was like, it's more than investing. It's more than speculating. It's more than trading. This is someone who understands how to use the medium as the art.